So a dead stage, a good dead stage with carpeting, especially carpeting, if nothing else, carpeting to absorb some cymbal sounds and some like upper, middle, and high guitar amp sounds and stuff like that. The side walls ideally should be covered. Now, depending on the jurisdiction, where you live in, there might be certain fire laws, fire code laws, where you can't hang certain materials. So you have to find out about the fire code laws, because that has been an issue in some clubs where only a certain percentage can be non-flame retardant, but a higher percentage of the stuff hanging has to be flame retardant. So find out your local laws before you treat, because a fire inspector could just come in and basically say, take all that stuff off the walls. It's not fire retardant. So that's a big issue when it comes to treating stages. So bare stage walls on a stage can really muddy up the mix and make it unclear, because you get all those reflections happening all over going into the microphone with short delayed replicas combined with the singer's voice, and so you get direct cymbals going into the microphone, and you also get reflections, and it's harder to mix, right? So all these steps help together, basically. Communication and getting along with people. If you get along with a band, you're probably going to have a much better night, because people are going to trust you and listen to you as a sound person, right? You can't just go around saying, turn your guitar down, or God, your band sucks, or something. Yeah, I've heard people say that. Listen, as a sound person, if a band is on stage, that's the reason I'm there. If there's no band on stage, I'm out of work. So I treat them like customers, okay? And so I get along with people. If they're newbies, and I've heard the same thing night after night after night with crappy sounding guitar, single coil pickups going through open back 8-inch combo amps, which sounds like, I'd rather clean my ears with steel wool than listen to that. I'll go up and help the person, because I'm not gonna say, look, you don't know the difference, because maybe they don't. Maybe it's I played my first show and I didn't know. My second show, I didn't know. People had to tell me these things. So I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I go up and I help them with their sound, as opposed to going, that sounds like crap, And if you make friends with promoters and managers, they might remember you. They might ask you to go on tour. I've been asked to go on tour before. But they will remember you if you're an idiot. So I do 100% remember all the idiot sound people that I've run into, but I don't remember all the nice sound people I've run into. Fewer microphones. Every time you double your open microphones, you lose 3 decibels of acoustic gain. Meaning, from one open mic at the same gain structure, if you're getting 90 dB from a vocalist out front, and then you open up another microphone at the same gain structure, you've now lost approximately 3 dB. So you go from 2 mics to 4 mics, you lose another 3 dB. You can't just keep opening mics. So try to use as few mics as possible to get the job done, which might mean, like, I usually share a cardioid microphone with 2 floor toms and 2 rack toms in a club. In a concert, I'll probably go for a few more mics if I've got the isolation and stuff like that on a big stage. But in a club specifically, I share microphones between toms. I mean, who's really going to appreciate, in a lot of clubs, a stereo drum roll with toms? Some speakers are too close together. Some rooms are too narrow for that. In fact, I've mixed a lot of shows mono when I had the capability of doing stereo. A couple of times I forgot to mix in stereo. A couple of times I went, what happens if I mix in mono? And mono sounded great, right? So you don't always need to go for the recording version of tom miking. This is not a studio. A live stage is not a studio. There's a lot of similarities, but it's not a studio. It is just close mic and get the job sounding as controllable as possible. On a live stage, you don't have the control you do have in a studio. And just try a few things out to keep the stage sound as clean as possible when it comes to miking things up. Electroacoustic, same thing as keyboard players. I ask them to put their master level on their acoustic at the 75% and maybe make their EQ flat. And then if we need to adjust their EQ, if they go, well, if I need a little bit more mids in this guitar because their strings are dead or something, they can do it. They can push a little more mids and it's not going to upset anything. So I leave a flat EQ on their guitar and ask them not to make drastic changes if at all possible. And if you do, just let me know what you're doing. Otherwise, I'm going to sit there and go, oh, okay, I'm going to fumble. And then you're going to not sound great for a few seconds when you could sound smooth and great all night if we just communicated about that. Check the battery. A lot of times people don't check the battery. And if you don't check the battery of your acoustic guitar, you start getting a warm, fuzzy sound until the battery just dies. So definitely check the battery. And I compress and limit only if I have to, but because acoustic guitars with piezo, or bridge pickups, actually sound, a lot of them sound amazing without compression. Acoustic guitar can be a very dynamic instrument, so if anything, I'll just mildly compress, or I'll limit the signal to control it. If the player is like really, really crazy, then I might have to do that just to control it. So for electric bass guitars, active or passive, I want to use a DI box as much as possible. I have been asked by some bands, or demanded that I mic up their cabinet, which is fine, I can do that, but I prefer to go direct because, again, it means less open microphones, and I get a way more controllable bass sound. Sometimes I'll go for the bass directly if it's a really nice bass, like a Music Man or Alembic or just a very high quality bass guitar. I can take the direct bass and it's going to sound really good. And it's smooth, and all the notes are going to be equal loudness. But cheaper basses, it's not quite like that. I might want to go through the amplifier from an effects send or a direct out of some sort, and then into a DI. I mean quarter inch into a DI. Some amplifiers have quarter or XLR outputs, and I could just take the XLR and bypass the DI and take the direct signal from the XLR, and that works too. Unless the amplifier, I think it was an Eden amplifier a couple of times, which had no level control. I'm not sure the brand name, but some amp had no level control, and it was way too hot at the board, and that particular board we had didn't have a decent pad on it. So the DI will have a pad, and so I prefer either to go right from the instrument or out of the amplifier of the instrument, and then I get some of the amplifier sound as well. And sometimes that actually sounds pretty good. So it really depends. You got to listen to it to hear the difference and then decide. So those are the 10 steps to have a really tight, clean stage sound. But the other thing is, if you want a CD quality mix, it's not always possible, but you should be aiming for trying to get the musical act on stage to sound like a CD. Even though it's difficult, you should try to do that so everybody has a great experience at the show. And of course, the more you control on stage, the less you have to correct out front, right? And the more you control, the less stress you'll feel. And then the less stress you feel, like you'll be able to actually perform better because you're not worried about all these eyes on you. Because a lot of times in clubs, you're out right there with the crowd and they're looking at you, right? If they're looking at you if something's going wrong or if something sounds amazing. But if there's no problems, people generally don't look at you. And the mix will be good if the stage sounds good. Assuming you've rung out the monitors in front of house, mixing is actually one of the easiest things to do if you control the stage and set up the sound system properly.